Just the Gemara, simply to read through the Gemara, Michael, would take 7 years. We'll have to do 1 page a day, 1 double-sided page. It would take me 7.5 years to go through the entire thing. Now, 1 page a day is exceptionally fast. As you can see, the way we dissect a Mishnah, we've spent all our time until now just dissecting a single Mishnah, which is 3 lines long. And I remember when my father-in-law, he completed the entire cycle of Shas in Daf Yomi, and he made a siyum on it in a shul, which was the Rebbe in the shul is one of the major protagonists of the Ashlag Hasidus movement. Ashlag Hasidus is the father of Ashlag Hasidus wrote a commentary on the Zohar. It's very much focused around the mystical side of Judaism. And the response and the blessing he gave my father-in-law was so surprising, because instead of him saying, "Oh, it's amazing what you've achieved," he kind of said, "Don't think what you've achieved is nothing." What are you talking about? Don't think just like the fact that you finished Shas. Don't underestimate that. That's also important. He said, because what Shas is, it's like the envelope. And if you don't have an envelope, how can you store the letter that's inside it? So I thought, whoa, that was a shifting moment for me. I thought Shas was a destination. So no, that's just that's the outskirts. Crazy! So the reason why it excites me is because imagine if you'd like spent a few years in Yeshiva and you go, okay, I've done it. I've covered the ground, that would be exceptionally disappointing for a tradition that's spanned 3,000 years. But on the contrary, the more I learn, the more and more I realize on more and more profound levels how I absolutely know nothing. And the thing that I think I know is even that I know nothing about, which is exceptionally exciting. People say, but isn't that overwhelming? Well, it depends how you look at it. Imagine, Teddy, if I took you on a trip to a faraway island that had never been discovered back in the day of the great explorers, and you land foot on an island, and you've never seen it. Never seen such an island, no one knows it exists. And you look around and you see trees which are completely unfamiliar. You see animals that you've never seen. You see a climate that you've never been exposed to. And there's this entire land waiting ahead of you. And you know that every step you take will be a new revelation, a new understanding, something grand and beautiful. Would you be excited or overwhelmed? Excited. Oh yes. Oh yes. Okay, so those words of introduction. Let's get back to business. Says no. Until now, we have understood that there's a marriage between the way we think and the way we analyze Gemara. And as you go from the macro to the slightly less macro to the more micro, the macro is the way our thoughts work through input, processing, and output. The slightly less macro is that when you're examining a text, you have to get the structure clear. Then you can engage in power questioning, which is the process of switching on your brain and analysis. Then you can go into paradigm shift, which is discovering the hidden meaning, the shift that comes out from the Torah that you've learned. When you bring that down to a micro level in understanding the Mishnah, it becomes the Mishnah analysis technique, which has 3, 5, and 3 questions. In total, 11 questions, which will enable you to unlock the secrets in the Mishnah. The first 3 questions revolve around structure. The middle 5 revolve around analysis. And the final 3, which we're going to see today, revolve around paradigm shift. The beginning 3 are just getting the structure of the Mishnah. What are the parts, how many, and why in this order? We had our Mishnah, we said there were 4 parts to our Mishnah, there were 2 cases in the Haminyach, there were 2 cases, there were 2 rulings, and the order was seemingly sequential. Then we went yesterday into an extremely detailed analysis of pointing out all the strange and extra things in the Mishnah. We wondered as to the shift in the language of the Mishnah. It starts off by calling the vessel a kad, it shifts and it calls it a chavis. What was that all about? Why does it describe the person who's placing the initial vessel as heimaniach, the one that placed it? Why didn't it use his possession of it? Balakad, as it said, balachavis in the latter part of the Mishnah. We notice that it says at the end of the Mishnah, Chayev benizkoi, why does that word need to be included? Then we went on to illustration, creating a vivid picture in our mind of exactly what happened, seeing that evolve, understanding the players in the process, imagining to ourselves what it looked like. What did the scene? Was it a road? Was it a pathway? What was this vase made out of that he placed over there? How big was it? 2 liters, 3 liters, 4 liters? Was it a gigantic urn? Was it a small, more tiny pitcher? We get ourselves a clear picture, and all of those picturing it, seeing it, will make a difference. For example, if the jug is a 20-liter jug, the chances of seeing it are far greater than if it's a 1-liter jug. So understanding the details is crucial. If it's a broad road where there's a throng of people, so then there's a different expectation if it's rather than if it's an isolated part. If it's in broad daylight where visibility is good, it's going to be different from a cloudy day or for certain at night. If it's in the middle of the road, it's going to be different as if it's on the side of the road or around a corner. And therefore, all those, when we illustrate it, we make strong decisions as to what the legal operating mechanisms are. And that's why it's good to do that. But we don't know. We don't know, correct. We don't know. So we have to use a little bit of Talmudic courage and go in there and make decisions about what we think. And that's really important to make those decisions about what you think, because when you make a stand about what you tell me or you tell yourself the Mishnah is talking about, today, Binyamin, you're the only Ben in the Shiur. The day has come, it's a hard day for Bens in the world. I suppose so. Still carrying the torch. You told you deliberately, you sabotage them. They're actually on the way. No, it's a different location today. So when you make a strong decision about what happened in the case, it allows you to be so alert to when the Gemara gives a different scenario. You'll pick it up. Because in order to understand things, we always understand them relative to other things, by contrast and comparison. So when I've decided, this is what the Mishnah is talking about, and then the Gemara suggests something differently, I go, whoa, why did it do it? And my mind is engaged. When I haven't made the decision, I've just left the Mishnah in a fog of vagueness, so then the Gemara will come and say, well, this is what the Mishnah is talking about. Okay, I'll just go with it, because I don't have any developed ideas of my own. So that's why illustration is so important. Then we did inference. We came up with some nice inferences. We said that the person stumbled. By implication, if he broke it, he would be liable. We said it was in a public domain. By implication, it would be in a private domain. He would be liable. And I think those are the two primary inferences we make. And then we thought about the logical mechanic. Well, why is this person exempt? And we concluded it must be that a person shouldn't need to look where he's going when he's in a public thoroughfare, and therefore the onus is on the placer and not on the walker. And we looked for a source, is this rabbinic or Torah in origin? And we said there is a precedent for the latter part of the Mishnah, whereby the person who put the jug there is liable for the damages of the other. That's called pit or bore, and therefore we're assuming this all is of Torah origin. And that concludes the 3 and the 5. What are the last 3? www.chidush.com. www.chidush.com is not a website. Don't look it up. It is 3 questions. 3 questions that we need to ask ourselves once we've gone through all this process. The first one is, what would I have thought? The second one is, why? And the third one is, why did the Tana, who's the author of the Mishnah, reject my thinking? So those are the 3 W's. What would I have thought? Why would I have thought that? And why did the Tana of the Mishnah reject my thinking? Now you'll say to me as follows: why is it important to know what I would have thought? What I would have thought, what would I have thought? Why Why did the Tanya reject my thinking? I was using the wrong marker. Sorry. I wonder why it was coming out so thick and clumsily. Let's try that again. What would I? And it's so important to do this. What would I have thought? You may say, but who am I? I am merely a humble student. What do I know? Why are my thoughts important? Why is it crucial? And that goes to the core of the difference between Talmudic education and the Western style of learning. In the Western style of learning, the teacher stands upon a pedestal. He is the source of all knowledge, and the students are the mere recipients. They are the sponges that should absorb the information that he's sharing. In that relationship, the teacher is on a pedestal, and the student is down there somewhere below. The student is, his understanding, his thoughts are irrelevant. He just has to absorb the information that the teacher has to give. In the world of Torah, it's quite the opposite. Over here, you have the Torah. The Torah sits here. The Torah sits here. He has knowledge. The student sits here. He has the recipient. Now, they have to communicate. The problem is, the young student has no idea how to understand these words. So the role of the teacher in Torah is to step between these and to act as a mediator. And he says, what do you want to know? Well, I just don't really understand why this is, because in my thought processes, it should be very different. What do you have to say about that? Let me explain, says the wives' Torah. Your thought processes are incomplete because of the following reason. Do you get that? Do you understand how they worked? Mediation. If you think about it, the way, as we will shortly see, the Gemara is not a teacher, it's a mediator. And you'll see the way it's stylistically presented. Because at the core of Jewish learning is the student, not the teacher. And the goal of the teacher is to facilitate and to bring out the student's capacity to understand. In order to do that, as we'll discuss in more depth today, the point is not to give information, because ironically, by providing a student with information, very often you're handicapping them. Because since you become the source of information, without you there, they become immobile, they become incapable. The goal of all good teaching is to step back and let them talk directly. And when they can communicate, then you've reached the zenith of your teaching career. You become completely redundant because you've empowered the student to become self-sufficient. And that's really what I'm trying to help you guys do today. I'm providing you with these skills so that you don't need to look at a assistant, aid, guidebook to be able to access the Gemara yourselves. You become empowered with the way of doing it, which will then give you the wings to fly through Shas, the legs to run through it, and the hands to climb and scale the mighty cliffs of Talmudic reasoning, so that you too can get to the top of Har Sinai, whether it be a crooked and winding path or a carefully placed ascent on a sheer cliff face. The choice is yours. Just don't fall off. So what would I have thought? What would I have thought? Why? Why would I have thought that? And why did the Tanya reject my thinking? The Tanya is the author of the Mishnah. Okay? Now, I start off, when I affirm what I would have thought, I'm now becoming present. I'm now acknowledging that in order for me to understand something, I need to understand it from whence I come. I can't understand anything in isolation. And therefore, what's crucial is I ask myself, it says in the Mishnah that when someone places a jug in a public domain and someone else stumbles over it and breaks it, the break is exempt for the damage caused. Now, when I ask myself, what would I have thought? I've got two options. I would have thought either you're liable or you're exempt. The Mishnah says I'm exempt. Every Mishnah is a chidush. It's a new idea, which means it's not self-evident. So if I think intuitively the same as the Mishnah's thinking, that's not good. That's a problem. Because if it would be intuitive, the Mishnah wouldn't bother speaking. So it must be that the Mishnah is counterintuitive, which means it's telling me something that I wouldn't have thought. So whenever I come to a ruling in a Mishnah, I have to think to myself, my initial thought processes would probably have been the opposite to the way the Mishnah rules. So if the Mishnah says you're exempt, I would have to think, I must think that, therefore I must have thought you'd be liable. So I think to myself, what would I have thought? I would have thought when he breaks it, the person who breaks is liable. Why would I have thought that? I'll tell you why I would have thought that. Because the onus of causing damage to others is on the shoulders of the pedestrian. A pedestrian is more than capable of looking where he's going. When you're driving a car, it makes no difference whether the person in front of you stopped suddenly or not. The person behind is always responsible because he should have been careful to keep enough distance between the car in front of him. You have to be conscious. When you're on a public thoroughfare, you have to know that there could be potential dangers and therefore you have to be aware of them. So I would have thought that he should be liable. And the reason why I would have thought that is because it's the onus of responsibilities on the shoulders of the pedestrian to make sure that he looks exactly where he's going. Why did the Tana reject my thinking? That's actually a great question. Why did the Tana reject my thinking? When I discover why the Tana rejected my thinking, I will also reinforce the principle. Why did the Tana reject my thinking? It must be that the Tana posits that the onus is not on the shoulders of the pedestrian, because since this is a public thoroughfare, a person has no right to put obstructions there, and because he has no right to put obstructions there, therefore the pedestrian knows that no one's putting stuff there. If no one's putting stuff there, he doesn't have to look. If he doesn't have to look and someone does put something there, it's not his problem. Something like that. But it's still developing. I don't have to have conclusive answers. Tom?
So if we have to slightly change the parameters, where it would be that the breakage is actually someone's body part. Let's say you walked into someone and
yes.
you broke their arm.
Yes.
You both had a right to be there.
Yes. Great question. What would happen if instead of colliding with a jug, you collide with a person? Because then there's another component which makes it more complicated. The person you collided with is a sentient being. He's aware as well. So then there's, the jug can't think, oh gosh, this guy's coming, let me just shift off to the side. But a person can. So there is another Mishnah in Bava Kama which deals with people colliding in a public thoroughfare. And if that's true also on Erev Shabbos. Because on Erev Shabbos, everyone's running around. So it could be that's an exception to the rule. Isn't it interesting? You have to actually learn through Bava Kama thoroughly, so I hope you've got a lot of time at your disposal because you've got a lot of work to do. Okay, so what we've done now is we've spoken out the basic principle of how all learning works, the fundamental pillars of the study of Talmud, and how that lands in the world of Mishnahs. Comprendos? Good? Are you ready to surge forward into how to learn Gemara? Yes? Yes, take a deep breath. Everything is about to change. So, Mishnah is a simple structure. It's a simple structure. It's not a debate. There's no back and forth. It's a presentation of a case generally with a ruling, a halakhic principle. It's not there to debate and to analyze. It is there to teach. That's why the Tanoim are called the teachers. The Gemara is made up of a different category of sage called the Amoraim. The Amoraim are their explainers. They explain what's going on. So what do they explain? They explain the Mishnah. They explain the Mishnah. Now, when you think to yourself, and you look at a Gemara, and you open up any Gemara, what you'll notice is that Gemaras would win absolutely no awards for design. It's almost as if, for some reason, no one edits the text. And I'll go from the very beginning till the very end. You look at the Gemara and the title of the book, which normally is helpful because it tells you what the content is. In Gemaras, very often it's not helpful at all. When you see the tractate called Egg, you think, oh, it's talking about kashrut? About eggs? I don't know. No, it's talking about Yom Tov. You look at the tractate called Yuma, the day. Oh, that's nice. It must be talking about all the mitzvahs you do in the day. It's talking about Yom Kippur. So the titles are often not helpful. So you look at the table of contents and to see where things are arranged. Oh, there's no table of contents. So you look at, oh well, don't worry, I'll look at the chapter title. Chapter title is merely a quotation of the first two words of the Mishnah. So you look at the punctuation, there's no punctuation. So oh well, at least the language isn't it's cryptic. Well, at least it's not written in some kind of mixture between old ancient Aramaic and Hebrew. It is. Well, at least sentences aren't left incomplete. They are. Well, at least they're not ambiguous. They are. Well, at least the logic is explained. It's not. Well, at least crucial background information isn't deleted. It is. What in the world is going on? Well, it depends as to what you view the Talmud as. If you think it's a textbook, it's the worst textbook in the entire world. Because textbooks which are going to teach you something, their title is Math 101. And then you go, oh, it's probably going to be talking about Math 101. And then it's beautifully organized and it's built in a structure that you get the first lesson first and the second lesson second. In Gemara, it says, Divrei Torah, the way it's built is there may be a sugya in Nida, which is the last Masech in Shas, which is exactly what you needed for the first one. It's just ad order. What's the game here? What game are we playing as we learn Gemara? The answer is quite simple. If the purpose of Gemara would be to teach information, you are 100% correct. It is absolutely abysmally designed. But if the purpose of Gemara was not to teach information, but to teach you how to think, how to process, how to comprehend, to invite you to become a participant in an eternal discussion and dialogue, then it's crucial that you don't have it fully fleshed out, because I want to hear your voice filling in the missing pieces. In order for you to develop your memory, I'm going to delete background information so you remember it. In order for you to develop your capacity to hypothesize, I'm going to create ambiguity in the text so you can think, well, it could be this way, and then, but it could be this way. In order to understand and delve deeper, I'm not going to spell out the concept. I want you to discover it by isolating the crucial properties and extrapolating them. I want you to become alive in the learning, not a passive recipient, but an active participant. Therefore, the Gemara is beautifully structured. It's not a study. It's an apprenticeship that we're invited to come and become a party to the discussion of the Amoraim as they go ahead and develop the concept. And we have to become, our voice needs to be heard in that discussion. And that's why the oral Torah does remain oral. It's oral. It's only through our discussion and dialogue that we discover the beauty in the text. Whoa. How do you do it though? But how do you do it? How do you do it? This is how you do it. You need to get the structure right, then you have to do power questioning, and then you have to do paradigm shift. But one second, you can't use the 353, can you? No. 353 is for Mishnahs, not for Gemaras. Well, what do I do in a Gemara? Welcome to the world of squatters. 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 You have to squatterize the Gemara to discover the structure. What is squatters? Squatters are the 7 primary elements of debate that the Ramchal, Reb Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in his work Derech Tevunos, points out are the only things that the Gemara can be, are the only operations that the Gemara does, which is amazing, because one of the most overwhelming things about seeing a new Gemara is it's a sea of words. There's no beginnings and ends. How do I find order in this chaos? The answer is quite simple. Squatterize, squatterize, squatterize. But, says Teddy to me and David with great consternation, pray tell, what is squatterizing all about? I've heard of quarterizing, but squatterizing? Aren't squatters people that ascend the Cape Slopes illegally? David Abrams. Number 1, S, statement. Statement is when the Gemara presents a new piece of information that's novel. Number 2, kasha, is a difficulty. A difficulty that's raised with any part of the Gemara. Number 3 is a question, which is a search for information, requesting for information. Number 4 is an answer which provides the information, and therefore question and answer go together. Number 5 is a teretz, which is a resolution. A teretz is a resolution that resolves a difficulty. So already a kasha and a teretz go together. A 6 is a raya, that is a proof or support. And number 7 is a stira. That's a contradiction where 2 equally weighted sources are juxtaposed. Contradiction. So that's squatter, which means every Gemara is comprised of an assortment of these 7 primary elements of debate. Doesn't necessarily have to be all of them, but it's almost inevitable that every sugya will begin with a statement, because that will be the focal point of the analysis. That statement may be a Mishnah, it may be a statement of an Amar, but every sugya is going to begin with that. Some sugyas only have kashas and terutzim. Some sugyas are a question with an answer. You may ask, what's the difference between a kasha, which is a difficulty, and a question, which is a question? The difference is, a question is a person who's seeking information. If I want to know what the time is now, I don't have a problem, I'm not disorientated, I just don't have a watch nearby. So I say, well, what's the time? I'm just looking for information. And when you say the time is 10:30, I say, thank you very much. Question, answer. If I look at you and I say, oh my gosh, it's 10:15. That's crazy. I feel like it's been 5 minutes. It should be 9:05. That's a difficulty. Why? How could time have passed so quickly? I don't understand. There's a problem. How can time fly that way? That's a problem. The resolution, it's just so amazing to be here. So much fun. And time flies when you're enjoying yourself. Kasha, teretz. Look at Tom, look at that face, look at that excitement, look at that unbridled enthusiasm. That's exactly what I'm talking about, how time flies. Oh, pensive one. So, so that's, do you understand? Statement, kasha, difficulty, question, I just don't know. Answer, this is the thing you didn't know. Teretz, resolution, this is how we resolve the problem. A raya is a support. I say something, but the thing I'm saying is unsteady. I've already demonstrated to Binyamin how unsteadiness works. If you just come over here, Tom, please. Would you stand upon that chair, please? Okay. Tom.
Yes, sir.
I look up to you. But also, in a certain way, you align me, don't you?
Very much so.
I'm like a support to you. Would you like to place your weight upon my shoulder?
How much?
All of it. I feel very supportive at this point in time. My relationship to Tom is a relationship of a support to a statement. He's a statement, he needs my support, which means a proof is a demonstration of weakness in the original statement because it can't stand alone. Stand alone. If he's self-standing, he doesn't need a proof, he doesn't need a support. So every support indicates a weakness in what's been said. If things are self-evident, you just say, oh, yeah, of course. So, well, tell me, no, prove it to me. It means that there's some doubt. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
An honor. Okay? So, the final of the 7 elements of debate is what's called a stira, which is a contradiction. That's not when there's an agenda of I've found something wrong with some particular statement. I have this statement on the one hand, seems perfectly okay. I have this statement on the other hand, seems perfectly okay. But 1 second, they have the same authorship, and when I put them together, they conflict. That's a problem. That's a problem. But it's not that this is wrong or this is wrong. They're both right, but the problem is they don't work. They don't work. It's a little bit like a bad marriage. He's right and she's right. But when you put them together, it's explosive. Yes, Jonah?
Well, where would you put a source that comes as a support for someone's argument where they're not necessarily on the same playing field? Like I have a brisa and you have a Mishnah. Or
Meaning, what I think you're asking is that you have in Machlokas Amoraim, 2 Amoraim disputing, and one brings a proof from Bryce and says, you see, my opponent, I'm right because I have a higher source that supports me and therefore disproves you. And the Amora counters either by saying, the support you brought isn't a proof to you and this is how you have to read it and therefore it's not a problem, or, oh, you have that support, watch the support that I have. So if those 2 supports are of same authorship, so then they would land up, it wouldn't be if they would bring a support, generally what happens is the Gemara will bring a support from an alternative brisa, and then the Gemara would either be compelled to understand the brisa through the lens of the other Amora, or to say that the 2 Amoraim are disputing in the machlokas of Tanoim. Good?
if someone brings a support from a weaker source and then the other person counters it with a higher or a better source.
So in other words, one Amora brings a pasuk, and the other Amora brings a Mishnah. It doesn't work that way. The level of proofs, above an Amora, Brisa, Mishnah, and pasuk have all got the same status. So neither proof is more so powerful than the other. Good? Okay. Now, what I'd like to call on you to do now is learn. We have in front of us a Gemara. And the Gemara analyzes our Mishnah. And pass around the page of Gemara, and I will guide you to as where to begin.
The same one as yesterday? Or
Different. If you can send the remaining copies back up in this direction. Okay, any extra copies, or that's everyone's got one? I feel like, Tommy, you've got like 6. Come on. Pass him back this way. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so now if you look at the second line of the Gemara, the last but one word from the end, amai, there's 2 dots. Or in fact, you can look at the first line of the Gemara, and the last word is uba acher v'niskar ba v'shavra potu. And this is quoting the first case in the Mishnah, and someone came along and he tripped over it and he broke it, he's exempt. Correct? That's a quote from a Mishnah. The Gemara quotes a Mishnah between 2 colons, and in order to question and expand upon it. So in our squatterizing, what is this? Is this a statement, Kasha, teretz? What is this? When the Gemara...
On the top.
Sorry?
Second one from the top.
Sorry, last word on the top line. I made a mistake. Last word on the top line. Uba acher. Uba acher. Can you see that, Jonah?
Yeah.
Michael? Binyamin? Got it? Zachariah, welcome. We're just asking, actually, briefly, I asked them what was the time. So that's a question. What is the time? Just asking. I'd just like to ask you, what is the time?
Time to shine.
That was the correct answer.
9:49.
Say again?
Also 9:49.
Also, but the time is to strike. Okay, Theodore, you with me? And someone else came and he tripped over it and he broke it, he's exempt. Yes? What is that? Kasha, teretz, raya, difficulty, resolution, question, answer. What is that? It's an answer to what question?
Statement, analyse.
It's a statement. It's a statement. This is a statement. This is a din. This is a Mishnah. So we're going to be operating on the statement of the Mishnah. I'm going to translate, and I'm not going to divide or conquer for you. I'm just going to help you with the translation. And then you're going to do this yourself. It says the Gemara, amai. Amai is an Aramaic word. It's equivalent of the Hebrew word lama. Amai really means on what. You'll find in many languages, the word for why is a compilation of 2 words. For example, in Yiddish, how do you say why in Yiddish? Farvos, which means for what? How do you say why in French? Pourquoi? For what? How do you say why in Spanish? Porque. Means, how do you say why in Hebrew? Lema, to what? How do you say why in Aramaic? Amai, on what? Ha ha! The linguistic synergy is simply chilling. Amai patu! Why are you exempt? Lama patu, lama, my patu, my patu. Says the Mishnah, says the Gemara on the Mishnah, you stated that when this person tripped over and broke it, he's exempt. Why? Why is he exempt? Iboile, it is required lay to him. Very important clue when you're learning Gemara. The Aramaic possessive third person is spelt not with a vav but a yud hey. Now, no, that was like, there was a really serious grammar language there. Sorry, it's a suffix. The suffix means a letter attached or a couple of letters attached to the end of the word. In Hebrew, to denote possession, you add letters at the end of the word. If I want to make it mine, I put a yud. Sheli. If I want to make it yours, I put a chaf, shelcha. If I want to make it his, I say shelo. So the vav is o. Hashem shelo, shmo. In Aramaic, the way you denote third person possession is instead of saying o, you say a, yud hey. So how would you say Hashem shelo in Aramaic? Shmei, Yehei Shmei Rabbo. You know it, you say in Kaddish every day. Yehei Shmei, it means Yeh Shmo Rabba Hagadol, Yeh Shmo Hagadol. Did you know that, Ted? Isn't that crazy? Okay, so Amai Patur, why is he exempt? Iboile, it's required to him. Li'iyune, the Aramaic infinitive is an ue. Li'iyune, the root of the word is ayin. Iboile, it's required of him. Li'iyune, to look. Umezal, and to go. Amri Devei Rav, said the school of Rav. Mishmei. Mishmei means in the name. De Rav, in the name of Rav. B'malei, when it's filled up, with filling up. Reshut Arabim, the Reshut Arabim. Kula, in its entirety. Chaviyos, barrels. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Ba'afela, in darkness, Shani, it was taught. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Bekeren Zovis, it was around a corner. End of translation. I will now give you a couple of minutes to divide this first 4 lines of the Gemara into its constituent parts using squatterizing as your guiding light. And may the force be with you. Okay? Go for it. Okay, so let's start off. The Mishnah, the Gemara begins with Uba'acher, v'nitka ba v'shavar patu. And someone else came along and he stumbled over and he broke it patu. That is a quote from the Mishnah, and that is the first part of the sugya, and that is number 1. That is number 1. Number 1 is a statement. It's stating a new piece of information, a new piece of Torah that we now have to analyze. Part 1. We're numbering and labeling as we go through. Okay? Part number 2. Amai patu, says the Gemara in deep bewilderment. Why is he exempt? It is required of him to look and to go. Stop. The Gemara is attacking the Tana of the Mishnah and saying to the Tana of the Mishnah, you have ruled that the person that stumbles and breaks it is exempt for his breakage. Why is he exempt? It is required of the pedestrian to look and to go. In other words, the onus should be on the walker, not on the placer, to be conscious of his environment, to notice if there's something in his way, and to avoid it if need be. And therefore, says the Gemara, attacking the Mishnah, why in the world is he exempt? He should be liable because he should look where he's going. Statement, what's part 2?
Question.
No.
Kasha.
Yes. Part 2 is a kasha. Part 2 is a attack, a difficulty with the Mishnah. Every kasha, and we'll explain this later, has to have a destination, address, and a target. But we'll go into that later. But part 1 is a statement, part 2 is a kasha. Part 3, Amar Amri Devei Rav, said the school of Rav, Mishmei de Rav, in the name of Rav. B'mamale, it was filled up, Reshus Sarabim, the public domain, Kula, in its entirety, Chaviyos, these barrels. Says the Gemara to answer up. Do you know why he's exempt? You are 100% correct. Would it be a single jug in broad daylight, he would be liable. The Mishnah is not discussing the rule, it's discussing the exception. The exception is that the public domain is blockaded with barrels. And therefore, since the barrels obstruct your path, you are allowed to break them and move past them, and therefore you're exempt for any damages caused. But of course, if it would not be the situation, you'd be liable. And that is part 3. So you have statement, kasha, teretz. Part 4, Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Ba'afel, in darkness, Shanu, was taught. The Mishnah was taught in darkness. Ba'afel Shanu, which means that Shmuel is resolving it in a different way. Why is he exempt? Because the Mishnah is talking about a case when it was pitch black, and therefore you couldn't see what was in front of you. And in that case, you're exempt. But were it to be in broad daylight, you would be liable. That's part 4. Part 5, Rabbi Yochanan says, Bekeren Zovis. Keren is a corner, Zovis means sharp or angled. It means it was placed around a corner, and therefore the barrel was placed over here, and he was walking, he turned the corner, and he had no forewarning of the barrel being, and that's why he broke it, and that's why it's exempt. But according to all of these three answers, of these three terutzim, in the scenario when you stumble and break a pitcher in broad daylight, you would be liable. So I want to bring out a couple of parts. First of all, the structure, as we said. Our small little Gemara over here is comprised of 5 different parts. There's a presentation of a statement. That statement is then questioned, a difficulty is raised. It doesn't make any sense. It just makes no sense. Resolution 1, resolution 2, resolution 3. 5 parts. Statement, difficulty, resolution, resolution, resolution. Do you feel, Teddy, when you have that numbered and labeled system, the Gemara, instead of being a sea of words, now becomes very well articulated beginnings and ends. You can see the structure. You know how it works. And once you see the structure, you can embrace clarity. And once you can embrace clarity, you can defeat the ultimate enemy of the Talmudic student, who is vagueness. Correct? Okay. So there you go. But really, David, this is just the very, very, very beginning. Because all we've done is we've created the structure. There's enormous amounts that we still have to do. But at least we have the structure clear. Whenever you learn a Gemara, this is the most basic level of understanding you need. If I come to you and I say to you, okay, how many parts of the Gemara? And you go, yeah, a few parts. And what are those parts? Different things. And what's the kind of the concrete takeaway from each part? You go, stuff. I will turn around to you and I'll sing you the song of vagueness. Zachariah, have I sung you the song of vagueness before?
No.
Oh, this could be the moment. Can I borrow your,
Sure.
to connect to the mic? Zachariah, this is a song that sometimes you may need to have sung to you. Are you ready for this? From love. Hello, vagueness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. In the midst of confusion, my brain feels like it's had a contusion. Because the fog and the darkness me surrounds with confusing sounds. In the midst of vagueness, fools, you do not know. Vagueness like a cancer grows. And if you, my dear wolf, avoid trying to learn with a friend called Cloyd, it won't help you in the slightest little way. And this I say to dispel the clouds of vagueness. And in the blinding light we saw many steigers and even more, numbering and labeling each part, making sure that they were never far apart from the power and the beauty of normal pshat. They avoided the rats that brought about by vagueness. There you go, not bad. It was like original. There you go. Yes, no. Okay, so you must avoid vagueness, and that's not a good thing. So 5 parts of the Gemara. Statement, kasha, teretz. Good? Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do is we need to go now on to the next step. Once you've done this, which is find where did I put that pen? Find the structure. Where did I put the pen? This is, you have to, in the Gemara, you have to number and label the parts. That's structure. Number and label the parts. Now, power questioning. If it's a statement, if you haven't analyzed it already, you need to put the 353 Mishnah and Gemara technique to work. If it's a kasha, you have to do two things. You have to figure out that's a person in a rifle sight. It's slightly abstract. Who's in the crosshairs? Who's in the crosshairs? Who's being shot at? Crosshairs are the two intersecting lines in a rifle sight, so you can get your target perfectly in your sights, and you have to define what was the premise. Whenever you have a kasha, you have to know who you're shooting at and what were you thinking in order that this is a problem. And we'll go through these in the Gemara shortly. If it's a question, you have to ask what info was missing. If it's an answer, how was it provided? If it's a resolution, you have to figure out what was the shift from the original premise. How did that shift? What happened? If it's a proof, how does it support? And if it's a contradiction, you have to know where is the conflict. And that's going to be your power questioning. So I have to go now.